tried it. People any longer than we have.
Okay. Well, I guess I don't need to call it to order, but we'll maybe get back to that later. So we've done introductions. Let's move on to staff communications.
Thanks everyone for being here. I can't think of any specific staff communications on our end. Things are going well. We've had a number of people working on our scan team effort. That's still going well. I forget where they are right now, but they've been bouncing around the region. Jen, any staff communications from your end?
I'll just jump in and mention that our summer data collection team is slated to begin on May 16th. So that is coming up very soon. Starting with all of our traffic counts, the ones that are requested annually by DOT, as well as some additional ones that we've identified to supplement the transportation travel demand model. In addition to that, we're also looking at some stream crossings that we'll be conducting, stream crossing assessments, excuse me, that we'll be conducting over the summer, as well as adding a more robust and targeted process of performing bicycle and pedestrian counts as well. So a lot coming up this summer in the data collection sphere. And if you have more questions on those, I will refer you to Stephen.
Okay. Discussion items.
Rachel, do you want to launch it on your end?
Do that. Good morning, everybody. Today we're gonna go over our regional data snapshot that we just launched a couple of weeks ago. This was a big effort, took up the bulk of the winter for us, and we're really excited. It looks really good and we're really excited about it. So the data snapshot is a document that we are publishing annually in April, usually. Last year was the first one, and so this is just the second iteration. It consists of over 100 data metrics, and there is a static PDF document on our website, as well as an interactive web map on our ARC Online account, and a series of Excel files that we're working on getting prepared that will have table versions of all of the data. Last year's document had a portrait layout, so the screenshot on the left is the income page. For any of the metrics that had maps last year, there was a page with text and charts and then a full page map on the following page. This year we changed it to a landscape layout so that the map would fit on the page with the charts. So in this example, the chart in the bottom left corner would be moved to the page that has the map that goes along with it, instead of on the same map page with the map that it does not match. The document has an introduction and then 5 chapters that the metrics are grouped in. Some of the metrics could fit in multiple chapters, but we tried to keep them together so that, for instance, all of the housing metrics are together in one chapter and not in multiple chapters. This is a list of the metrics by each chapter. So this is the demographics chapter. We were able to add 7 new metrics to this chapter this year. Economic vitality, we had built out pretty well last year, so we still added 3 metrics, but a lot of what's here is continuations from data that we had last year. Livability and quality of life, we added a few new metrics as well. including the transit safety performance measures that I believe we discussed at TAC a few months ago. I'm not sure, Colin, if you remember which month.
I don't remember which month, but fairly recently, February or March.
Okay, yeah. Mobility and accessibility is a very big chapter, so we've broken it into 2 pages here. So there's a couple of new freight metrics and a new sidewalks page, which has the sidewalk data that our data collection teams have collected over the past 3 or 4 years. And then the resiliency chapter we added a lot to this year. Last year we didn't have a lot of resiliency metrics because we were doing this document along with the Metro Plan and SEDS. So we were very focused on getting all of the transportation and economic development sections down. So we were able to spend more time on resiliency this year. So the data snapshot can be found on our website. The PDF can be found here. This page has some information about the snapshot, future editions, and plans that we have for it in the future, as well as last year's document and this year's. So the first couple of pages are a portrait just for the cover and introduction, a reference map, a couple of reference maps. And then we're just going to go through, not the whole document, but just a couple to show some of what's new. So the group quarters population is a new metric this year. It looks at the decennial census data. So we just have this data for the first time since the 2010 census was conducted. So we were able to add new data here today, or this year. Group quarters are populations living in institutional housing or non-household living arrangements. So the majority of the group quarters population in our region are in college and university dorms, mostly in Durham, as well as quite a few nursing facilities and residential care facilities.
Hey, Rachel?
Yep.
I'm forgetting if there's a way for me to have the participants view.
Literally, when I work, I have like pile.
Separate from the presentation, just because it's a little small on the screen with everything else going on Zoom. And I want to make it a little bit.
I'm sorry, I missed what you were asking. Are you asking how to minimize?
Oh, well, first, yes.
Under my view there. Down
I guess, are participants across the top or across, down the side? There should be a way to slide
I think I
the
figured it
view
out.
smaller. Okay.
Okay. I think
Ready? I can zoom in a little bit as well too.
that's better.
Okay. So yeah, that's the group quarters page. We have excess deaths, which is, that's kind of hard to see on here. I'll have to fix the colors on this page and redo it. Yeah, we'll skip this one. Do limited English proficiency. This is a metric that we look at for environmental justice in Title VI. And we are adding it this year. We had linguistically isolated households last year, which looks at households where no one over the age of 14 can speak English at least very well. limited English proficiency is individuals who cannot speak over the age of 5 who cannot speak English at least very well.
I go to the water.
And then I'm going to turn it over to Stephen for the next couple.
Sure. Yeah, so this, oh, go ahead. So we wanted to do also workforce numbers by age. We had been doing in the past percentage by age, but we thought it was important to capture for 2020, especially, that there was a lower total number of people in the workforce, that we would capture, you know, exactly the amount of people in each of these age buckets. So something that was kind of interesting to see here is for employees under 18, Q4 is typically the highest number of employed people under 18 each year. And 2020 was the first year where actually Q4 was the largest. So that was kind of interesting to see, likely due to the pandemic. And then also we saw the employees over 65 kind of flatlining, you know, that's a product of 2020 as well. We can kind of attribute that to kind of an increased number of people retiring, and maybe, you know, people didn't want to be risking exposure to COVID as well, with whatever respect their job was. So I think that kind of covers that. Next was inflation. Oh no.
Too far.
Oops.
There we go.
So obviously inflation was something we kind of added a little last minute because it became very apparent in the last few months how crazy things have been getting. We use consumer price index for the Northeast urban labor market. This was kind of the best metric we thought to use. So we looked at year over year percent change. So it's compared to what last year looked like around the same time frame. You can see that 2022, we are getting very high on the consumer price index, meaning that our inflation is increasing. And this is actually not taking into account March. We actually stopped around February is the latest data we could get. So it was only going to get worse from what these charts reflect.
It was helpful to zoom in a little bit, Rachel, if you're at the helm there on the individual charts.
And then, all right, so this one was grandparents caring for grandchildren. We thought this was another one we wanted to add in, just based off the fact that, you know, the cost burden for families that for having grandparents take care of their grandchildren during the day. We saw obviously a pretty sharp decline here, over 15 or nearly 15% of Stratford County between 2015 and 2020. That's likely due to you know, a myriad of factors with COVID. We all know that children are kind of disease vectors, and maybe that we can't make too many assumptions, but possibly that you know, grandparents were trying to reduce their you know, exposure to the coronavirus.
Stephen, I'll jump in. This is not daytime caring for grandchildren. This is grandparents who are the primary guardian of grandchildren.
Right.
This is number of grandchildren living with their grandparents.
Correct. We'll move to voting. So yeah, this one was also very important to get the 2020 information that was now out, that we weren't able to capture for last year. This was obviously a pretty parsed out distribution of party affiliation. Obviously, there was a pretty heavily increased amount of absentee voting between 2016 and 2020. And then we were able to get a pretty high voter participation, but we still in the region lagged about 4% behind New Hampshire. Yeah, we still had about a little under a third that did not vote. So that's good for that.
So this year, the broadband access is not a new metric this year, but the definition that we used has changed. So that is why I wanted to highlight it today. So last year we used a 2015 definition of broadband that was still in effect. That was about a fourth of the speed that the new definition is. And the new definition is in line with the broadband funding opportunities in the new infrastructure bill that was passed last year. So the maps, the three maps that we have here are based on the definition used in the broadband sections of the infrastructure bill. So these are more representative of current situations and definitions that will be fueling funding opportunities moving forward. This is the sidewalk data. Most of the sidewalks in the region were collected through a very abbreviated sidewalk inventory that we use. That is just, is there a sidewalk? Is it somewhat good, fair, poor condition? Just kind of estimating without any measurements. And then is it accessible? And again, that's without any measurements. So we had, Stephen had a baby stroller that he pushed around to see if the baby stroller could get through as a proxy for accessibility. So that is the methodology that we used in every community except for Rochester and Durham, I believe. Rochester, we used the full SAIDS inventory methodology, and Durham had another third-party vendor that collected data that they were able to share the data with us. And the more thorough SAIDS data collection that we did in Rochester, we can do in other communities on request as well.
All right, so renewable energy was also one we wanted to tackle this year. Kind of just looking at what the utility network is versus the residential and commercial environment for renewable energy. We've kind of recognized that utility network in our region for renewables is not too expansive. It is basically just the biomass pipeline between Turnkey and UNH and the myriad of hydroelectric dams that we have on the Salmon Falls River. We kind of noted that most of the significant local power sources were from non-renewable coal and coal power plants, natural gas, but there also is another, obviously the nuclear power plant down in Seabrook. How much of that actually goes into our region, I could not really find out, but that's something we wanted to at least note. Something that we wanted to make a note of also with New Hampshire is we see that New Hampshire being kind of one of the biggest ways that we can increase our renewable energy would be by installing solar installations. We don't have the blessing of having an extensive coastline like Massachusetts, where they are looking to supplement a lot of their renewable energy with offshore wind. So we wanted to look at what kind of is the history of how these residential and commercial solar installations have been going. And there hasn't been many utility installations, but we would love to see obviously more in the future. There's kind of just based off of one of the solar company we got the data from, they anticipate an increase of 260% of solar power between 2021 and 2025 for New Hampshire. Don't know how much of that is going to happen, but obviously that is an ambitious goal that we would love to see. But we just want to kind of look at a general scale of kind of how the SRPC region has been and New Hampshire has been dealing with renewables. And then the last thing here was urban heat islands. Something that we wanted to note, we wanted to make a lot of slides, especially about climate change. This one was especially notable because of how, especially by the end of the century, how we could see very hot days of the heat index exceeding over 100 degrees on a more regular basis than we're used to, which is kind of scary for especially New Hampshire. And we kind of wanted to know, especially in the cities, and kind of those really dense urban concrete asphalt environments, that's where you're going to see a majority of those heat islands. And ways to supplement that are with like street trees, green spaces, and how that can kind of reduce the overall heat of even a 5-mile radius sometimes, even just with one park. So we kind of wanted to point this out as another factor to think about for what climate change can do to New Hampshire moving forward.
And then the last thing that we wanted to show you was the map viewer, but Stephen, you were going to do that, correct? Do you have that open?
Ooh, I do not have that open right now.
All right. Then I'll go to the questions page while you open that and see if there's any questions at this point.
Rachel, this is Paul Maloney. We talked just a day or so ago about a meeting that I arrived at just in time to see people logging off. And thanks for staying on with me to discuss that a little bit. One question I did ask you, and it was more out of curiosity, I think, than anything else, was when the last update happened to the long range plan, your metro plan. You told me that was pretty recently, and I guess I'm a little curious how this document was informed by the long range plan, or what kind of a connection there is between these documents. There's a lot of information in here. This looks great.
Thank you. Yeah, so the over the course of the pandemic, we were updating the metro plan and the economic development plan at the same time, and there's a lot of overlap in some of the basic demographics and some of the other metrics that the two plans talk about. And so we started developing this document as a way to kind of have all that stuff in one place and streamline our work to get as much information as we could available for both plans, but not doing the same maps and charts multiple times in the same month. And so both of the plans reference this document pretty heavily, or pull a chart or map in. And this is just kind of all of the things that we talk about in both of those plans.
Thank you. That's so it sounds like it's a pretty important source document to help the other plans. That's a really nice use of the information.
Thank you. Chris, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. My question is probably from ignorance is, how often is this data snapshot done? And just trying to think of its relevance and trying to compare it to other data.
So this document is updated annually. Most of the data that's in the document is updated annually as well, but we do have a few sources that are updated quarterly or monthly as well.
Yeah.
So for some of the data, there are more, as of this week, there are not likely to be more recent data, but in a few weeks or a couple of months, there will be some updates to some of the sources.
Okay. And how is the, I'm just, and there again, I apologize, it's probably out of ignorance. Over the last year, 18 months, become more and more aware of the homeless population, or it's almost like it's a mini migration within the county, depending upon the season and the climates. Was from the census data, where were they put in the other category, or how were they tracked? I mean, for instance, it was surprising for me to see that you'd actually looked at the Stratford County population in the jail cell. I never would have thought of that, but out of sight, out of mind, I guess. So that makes me just curious, how do we track, or especially with the movement of gets you well to create additional housing sources. How is that going to get tracked, or is it tracked currently?
Sure. I know that as part of the 2020 census, there was an effort to count people where they were staying in the homeless populations. I don't know where those numbers get tabulated, so I'm not sure if they are in the all others line in this table or not. I can look into it.
Just, it's more of a curiosity thing, because and it directly relates to our, the town's budget. I mean, if this information is very relevant to within our own budget. In other words,
Yeah, we are doing a housing needs assessment right now as well, and we'll be doing a lot of additional research specific to housing and where people are living if it's not in houses.
Okay.
And so we might have some more information coming out of that.
all right, thank you. Do I take down my hand, or does somebody else take it down? Oh, it says lower hand. Very good. I can be trained.
Stephen, can you bring up the map viewer, like the story map, not just the map?
Sorry about that. Hold on. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So this was just going over kind of the introduction of the snapshot and what it's about, kind of how to use the map viewer, and then a little bit of the data disclaimer of where everything is being taken from. And then there's the map viewer itself. So what we can do is turn on with these little eyes here, where we hide and unhide layers, what we would like to look at for data. So right now we're looking at minority populations. And what you can do is you can go down to the census tract as well, and get a little pop-up of the percentage of the population that is minority. And this is kind of the same way for almost all of this information. Everything has a pop-up. It's usually split by tract or municipality, and everything is interactive. I've also found that if you open in Map Viewer Classic, it's a little bit easier to use. You can see a little bit easier what you've turned on and what you've turned off. But this is just another option. So you just have to turn on and off the hide key to get all this information. But yeah, it's all split up by chapter. And it has almost, I think, about all the data that we had that was mapped in our data set. So very cool stuff. Props to Jackson for putting this together.
All right, thanks, guys. Any other last points on the data snapshot you want people to know about? Besides that it's on the website and take a look and use the data.
Yeah, I think that covers it. I am aware of a couple of small edits that need to be fixed. Just some formatting things that didn't draw correctly in the PowerPoint or the PDF. So I'll get those fixed and republish it as soon as I can.
I think it looks really good. It clearly took a lot of work, but it's nicely formatted.
Thank you.
And I think it's kind of an example where we're trying to move in this interactive data direction with our documents and plans and so forth. So they're less of a static PDF, and the text portion is by itself, and it references these more interactive things. So people can go and, you don't have to read a 200-page document. No one's going to do that. But it presents little bites of information, and then if you want more details on a specific issue, something that's a little more accessible and interesting to look at than scrolling through PDF.
I think I heard one of you say that there was Excel tabular data for this also. Is that on the website as well?
Not yet. Right now, it's still in individual spreadsheets by metric. We're going to be combining it into 2, maybe 3 spreadsheets per chapter, so that all of the information is in tabs in a few spreadsheets rather than 120 spreadsheets. Hoping to have that done the next month or so.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
It was quite a lot of work. So
Any other business?
I'll just note for next month, I'm pulling together a little panel discussion with folks on EV charging, since there's a lot of money in that, and it's all moving targets at this point from when I talk to people. So I have folks from Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, our neighbors over in Maine. They've been doing a lot of work in this, and they've put together a little guide for the zoning and regulation side of things for municipalities. And I've got Jackson Spari, who's the sustainability coordinator in Dover, coming to talk about work that Dover's doing. And I'm trying to get someone from Durham, since they've had publicly funded EV chargers since 2013. They had one at the library that is free. I completely forgot that it's free to charge at the library. And then they have a charge point one in one of their public lots as well. So they have some interesting lessons learned with that, with utility rates and the cost benefit analysis and so forth. So hopefully those guys in June. Other than that, don't think there's anything pressing on other business from my end. Okay.
Anyone have any community updates?
I'll share that we just agreed to put solar in for the first time in our town, so we're really excited.
Like on buildings or
On our transfer station. We've been trying for 5 years, so it's kind of a big deal.
nice.
How often does the sun shine in New Hampshire?
I forget. It's good, you know, if we have good solar capability, the comparisons that I've heard are that it's much more cloudy in Germany, but they get a lot of their power from solar. So it is pretty good. For residential, it just depends on the roof orientation. If you have a southern facing roof, that's great, but I may be putting in solar and I have an east-west roof. And they looked at it and ever since they took down all the trees in the lot next to me to build a house, they said, now you're great for solar. It's sort of a southwest roof. So as long as you don't have some weird house that only has a roof facing north.
The one slanted that way.
Yeah, some kind of strange A-frame or something. We have pretty good solar out there. We're not Arizona, but it's good. There are fewer incentives these days. I think 2016 on the chart there showed a big boost in solar installations. So the incentives may have been peaking there, but there are various options for financing and stuff. And so I'm hoping Southern Maine folks can talk about that because they have a solar collaborative of sorts of municipalities they're getting together for I think purchasing equipment bulk rates and things like that. So, any other thoughts from our agency partners, DOT or PS?
I just have to say, the presentation that you guys did earlier and the data that you're collecting, kudos to the SRPC team. You guys have to do a model in the state now of how you're collecting this data and putting it out there. I'm not following the other regional planning commissions, but it's very impressive.
Well, thank you. And I think we've heard something similar from federal folks that haven't seen something like what Rachel and Stephen and Mark put together, and Jackson as kind of a model for other NGOs too. So they got a shout out and a request to talk. Yeah, it's really good. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, the idea started from we need a better way because we had 3 entities, SRPC, EDD, and NGO, and all 3 of them were making data requests, different staff for different things. Rachel said, hey, stop, we're gonna do one thing, put it centrally, and then why don't we make it public and, you know, an annual update document. That's it. So.
Yeah, we had 2 requests for the almost the same map in the span of a couple of weeks, and then I realized we're doing 2 plan updates that will be a lot of similar requests. So
You guys are doing really good work. I agree. And we're really lucky to have you as a regional planning agency.
I'm just curious, is there, I second the motion that, you know, kudos to the group for doing that. I mean, it's phenomenal. Is there a way to track how some group or some team or some department actually use that to help them make a decision? Or some reward for the team knowing that I did all of this, but is anybody doing it? You know,
I think the communities need to tell the regional planning when they're implementing some of these plans to let them know. I've been trying to do that every single time.
Yeah, I mean, that would be,
grants.
that's a good point. If we could get, we would always appreciate knowledge, but knowing if someone looked at the snapshot and
right.
As Chris was saying, using this for budgeting, that's amazing. I'm sure we can count clicks for how many times someone clicked on the link on the website, but that doesn't tell us where they scroll to the document to look at bridges or you know, on house population or whatever.
Be interesting, put a little survey on that page, look at 2 questions, you know, How are you using this data? I don't know, some other question that just that people might actually click on real quick when they're downloading it.
Yeah.
To give you some additional data. If it was very long, people would just skip it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can get a little bit more detailed analytics from the web map, but the PDF is, like Colin said, it's tricky. We're limited to just the number of clicks on the document itself. But yeah, maybe a survey of how can we improve, or how helpful was this? And we would love to hear from you if you use it. And
Anything else from anyone?
I'm sharing on Facebook. So I'm so excited to have this for the community to share. Like, I'm so excited. This is really great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's no need to have a motion to adjourn. I believe we weren't an official meeting in April either.
Correct.
And the March minutes have still not been approved. So hopefully next month,
Hopefully in June,
we'll meet our quorum.
more people with the ED webinar. So yeah, we're trying to go back to more emphasis on the in-person. Even as COVID rates have tripled in New Hampshire over the past 3 weeks, so we're still in this weird limbo stage, as with everything. But until the state legislature changes something in the law of 91A, we're still stuck with an in-person forum. Unless something really bad happens and the governor switches back to the emergency order, which let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So, but thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. I know as days get even nicer.
Colin, you have a hands up.
Oh, shoot.
Colin, I just wanted to interject. Chris Jacobs. I spent last week, I think, home 3 or 4 days, raging head cold. And so in thinking of others, I said, if I go there in person, I'm susceptible, but secondly, I could give something to someone else. So I appreciate the fact that I could attend by Zoom and not risk infecting others. That's all. So.
And we appreciate that consideration. That should be the default, is not infecting other people. And so
Right.
I can't think of a meeting that would be worth attending and putting others at risk.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
That said, get some fresh air.